But an NBA team has shockingly, for some reason, dismissed their coach. The Milwaukee Bucks have moved off Adrian Griffin as their head coach after only 43 games. They're 30-13, three and a half out of the best spot in the Eastern Conference. Josh, you've watched this team more closely than I have this season. What do you make of this move?
People are going to compare it to what the Cavs did in 2016 when they fired David Blatt and brought in Tyronn Lue. This is a totally different situation because what's probably going to happen is the Bucks are going to hire somebody outside of their coaching staff. The name I've heard is Doc Rivers.
It's a name I've heard as well.
We shall see if that, in fact, comes to fruition. But anyway, you look at what the Bucks have done so far this season. Their defense has not been the same level it's been in the seasons past. We have not seen a lot of the Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo pick and roll that we were expecting to see. And for some reason, it just hasn't quite felt right in Milwaukee all season. You know, they got the blowout win against the Boston Celtics like a week or two ago, but you can't take much from that game because the Celtics were on the second night of a back-to-back. They were playing their fifth game in 7 nights or whatever it was. So,
by the way, the Cavs just destroyed them last week by 50, and they will obviously get to see Milwaukee again tomorrow night. I agree with you on the Doc Rivers and David Blatt completely different situation thing. I was also wondering if by chance this is tampering by Doc Rivers. He's in a contract with ESPN. He's going to leave the booth in the middle of the season to go coach the Bucks. It sounds like he was advising Adrian Griffin as well. I also heard that Griffin did not connect with veteran players. Damian Lillard was struggling in his offensive scheme. So I guess it makes sense, though I think firing a coach mid-season or what's your name's LeBron when you do it every 2 years is weird. But I'll say this. We know in the NBA, coaching does not matter. Football coaching is a huge aspect. In the NBA, it matters a little bit when you get to the playoffs, but there are two kinds of coaches in the NBA. There's the coach that can coach a lot of young kids, and then there's the coach that can get you to a championship. And I don't think Adrian Griffin was the right fit for this team. Coach Bud was obviously not the right fit for this team. Doc Rivers does choke a lot in the postseason, so it'll be interesting if he can change that narrative around. He's basically Andy Reid, but the opposite, where Andy waited all those years to get a championship. Doc Rivers got the championship first in Boston before deciding to blow all those 3-1 leads, whether it was in Boston or Philly or the Clippers or any other place he's coached.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do hope Adrian Griffin gets another opportunity as a head coach, though.
Boy, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. When you get fired from that job, people are going to be like, what the hell happened with that guy?
I just think it was the wrong team at the wrong time.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I still think Milwaukee, now they're number 2 right now behind Boston. I've said it all year. I still think Milwaukee's the best team in the East. But they know, and this is a Milwaukee organization that went out and got Damian Lillard for Giannis because they did not want Giannis to either request a trade or leave via free agency. Right. They are committed to getting Giannis another NBA championship. Giannis, I think, is being more demanding and more aggressive as a superstar, which I like. And we know that the NBA is a players' league, so we'll see how this change affects the team moving forward. But again, for this team, it's a lot like what I've said about Boston. It's what I've said about Denver and some of these other teams. The regular season for them is essentially practice. We will not know how good this Bucks team is or what the coaching change will mean until they get into a 7-game series in the postseason.
I agree with you. I do think I hear what you're saying, but I do think especially with the depth you have in the Eastern Conference this season, even though I think you and I agree that it's Boston, Milwaukee, and everybody else. But you look at some of those teams in the everybody else category, You've got Miami, Philadelphia, New York, Indiana, Cleveland. So there are some dangerous teams in there. So, like, in that regard, I would say the regular season does matter because it determines who plays who. It can also determine when does Boston play Milwaukee in the playoffs? When does Boston play Philadelphia? When does Milwaukee play Philadelphia? When does Milwaukee play Miami? So in that regard, I would say the regular season does matter.
And I hear you on that front. Well, last night in the NBA, on the same day that Kobe Bryant embarrassed Jalen Rose and dropped 81 points, we had two historic regular season performances, and I emphasize regular season. I'll get to that in a minute. Joel Embiid obviously putting up 70. Karl Anthony Towns puts up 62 in a losing effort. Obviously, we have Jokic in there as well. You have Towns, you have Embiid. You have so many skilled big men in today's NBA. Really, the question is, Josh, is this the new era of the NBA?
I would say so. You look at the big man now in the NBA. You mentioned them, Jokic, Embiid. I would even throw Giannis in that discussion.
You could, though I was thinking more like 7 foot, the guys that actually play center. Victor Wembanyama, who obviously is a unicorn in its own right for San Antonio.
Okay, so if you want to go that route, I would include Porzingis in that discussion. Jared
Porzingis?
Jared Allen to a lesser degree.
To a lesser degree. He's had a really good year for the Cavs, especially since Mobley's been out of the lineup.
Yes. He's not as much of a three-point shooter as, the likes of Embiid and Jokic, but, he's pretty skilled, but I love it now. Like, you have all these two-man games. I think Murray and Jokic are the best two-man tandem in the NBA right now. But, you look at Maxey and Embiid, that's intriguing, and you want to watch these matchups because it's Jokic against Embiid. Who's going to get the better of who? But I want to focus more on Embiid's performance from last night rather than Karl Anthony Towns, because I want to talk about the message that I think Joel Embiid is sending to the rest of the Eastern Conference and maybe even the rest of the league. He does not care about winning league MVP this season. That's been his main goal over the past couple seasons, but just from the way he was playing, not just last night, but in general, he's like, screw the MVP. I want the championship.
It's the same attitude Jokic had last year.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. I want to talk about both of these performances because I know you're going to kill me on this take for this. But I believe in my heart of hearts, nobody is going to remember either one of these two performances if one or both of them flame out in the postseason, because it doesn't matter if you score 70 or 62 in a random night in January. I'd rather have you score 38 in a game 5 with the game on the line than score 62 and lose in January. The Minnesota Timberwolves right now, I believe they're the number 1 seed in the West. If not, they're right there in the Western Conference.
Yes, they are the number 1 seed in the West.
This is their best team they've had in years. Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns are leading the charge. Philadelphia, I believe, is third in the East, right there with Boston and Milwaukee. Historically in the NBA, if you are not a top 3 seed in either conference, this is where, to your point about the regular season, it may not matter in terms of win-loss record, but historically, seeding does matter. Because if you don't get a top 3 seed, you generally don't make it out of the second round. For both of these guys, for Minnesota, this is their best team they've had in probably our lifetime. And so they need to get, if you're the number 1 seed, if you're the Timberwolves, I don't care who you have to go through, you got to get to the conference finals. Philly, you got to get past Boston. You got to get past Milwaukee. And if Joel Embiid has a bad postseason or Karl Towns has a bad postseason, no one is going to remember about the historic nights in January. Look at Donovan Mitchell last year, put up 75 points for the Cavs in a game. Who cares? They got bounced out early by the Knicks. Devin Booker put up 70-something in the bubble. Who gives a rip? It was in the bubble. It was a meaningless game. Do it on the biggest stage when 12 million people are watching, not a million or so people on your local NBA TV on a Monday night in January. Where, by the way, the league is so talented now that it is a lot easier to score. And in the playoffs, we don't get as many fouls. The referees are going to swallow the whistle. We get a lot more physical play. Scoring is down. Coaches are able to make adjustments. It's, as I keep telling you, it's why I believe as the NBA has turned now to this new century and we have so much more talent coming from the international and the G League and other places other than the draft, you don't really need a big three anymore. You need a superstar, you need a star, and you need a ton of role players, which is what both Miami and Denver had a year ago.
Right. And when we were talking, let me just say this. When we were talking about the big men earlier, Jokic, Embiid, Porzingis, Jared Allen, we can't just dismiss Bam Adebayo.
I mean, we can.
I think Bam Adebayo needs to be included in that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's, like a top 2, top 3, center in the East, maybe, but he's not a big name. I think on a championship team, he's really a number 3. He's not a number 2, which what I think Miami really, with all those role players last year, was phenomenal at because they got huge contributions from Struz, from Caleb Martin, from Gabe Vincent, and the one Bam to be the complementary role piece, which is what he should be.
Yes. I'm going to divert a little bit from what we're talking about because I want to talk about the Miami Heat specifically and the trade they made today, picking up Terry Rozier from the Charlotte Hornets. I think this is a fantastic trade for the Miami Heat. I really, really like this. I do feel bad for Kyle Lowry that he has to go to an abysmal organization in the Charlotte Hornets.
My guess is they'll probably buy him out.
Okay, fair. But I think Miami just put themselves, not that it really matters with Miami because we saw what they did last year, but by pulling off this trade, they solidified their point guard position. I think him and Jimmy Butler are going to play phenomenally off of each other. And Bam Adebayo is going to benefit from this, I think. And I really think you have to watch out for the Miami Heat now. Not that you could just ignore them before, because they were in the finals last year, and they've been in the Eastern Conference Finals like 3 of the past 4 years or whatever it is. But the Miami Heat are a legit contender now after this trade.
It's TBD for me because I need to see if Terry Rozier has that dog in him. I think at this stage in his career, he's a little bit of an upgrade over Kyle Lowry. I don't even think he's that big of an upgrade. I think he's a better scorer at this point, but I think Kyle Lowry is a really good leader. I think he's a veteran guy. He's a guy that made big plays in the playoffs. He's a big shot maker. And so can Terry Rozier replace some of that? That's the big question for me, and I don't think it moves the needle that much, in my opinion.
And then let me ask you this. What was your reaction to Pascal Siakam getting traded to the Indiana Pacers?
So my reaction to that is, Tyrese Haliburton, Pascal Siakam, obviously 2 very good players, but Indiana is at best a 5 or a 6 seed, even with those 2 guys. Again, it probably moves them from a position of like we may be a fringe playing team to probably a 5 or a 6 seed. Depending on who they draw, like the Knicks last year with the Cavs. Could they win a round? Maybe, but they're not anywhere close, in my opinion, to being a championship team. They're not close to Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, Miami. I think they're pretty much right there where the Knicks were last year with Cleveland.
If I had to guess, as of right now, my top 6 would be Boston gets the 1 seed. I'm going to say Philadelphia actually moves up to the 2 seed. Milwaukee gets the 3 seed. I'm going to say Miami gets the 4 seed. Cleveland as the 5 seed. Indiana as the 6 seed. I feel pretty confident in those 6. And if you look at Indiana, they could possibly upset Milwaukee if we get that first round playoff seed.
No,
Yes,
no.
yes.
Milwaukee, I'll put it this way: if Milwaukee gets upset in the first round, the whole trade's a disaster. Milwaukee cannot get upset in the first round.
Oh, I agree. But look at what Indiana has done against Milwaukee so far this season.
Again, it's the regular season. Do you remember when the Nets beat the Heat like 4 times in a row that one year, and Miami came back and stomped them in the postseason?
Yes, I get it. The regular season is different, but just look at the games though. Indiana clearly matches up well against Milwaukee.
Two of those, though, were also in the in-season tournament, which some teams cared on, some teams did not. So,
sure, I hear you on that one, but I think the Pacers, if they get matched up with the Bucks in the playoffs, I think the Pacers could really give the Bucks a serious headache.
They may push them to 6, I'll give you it, but I don't think they can knock them off. I think it'd be a terrible matchup for Cleveland. I would not want to match up against Miami. To be honest, if I'm the Cavs, I probably want Indiana. With the way they're playing, I'm very nervous about our hometown Cavs when we get Darius Garland and Evan Mobley back, because I just have a feeling they're going to mess up the rotation and JP's not going to know what to do again, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't get it. Why are we played so well without Darius Garland and Evan Mobley?
Because sometimes when you shrink the rotation and guys know their job and there's no pressure, you're a better team. We often hear the phrase sometimes, it's not all about the talent, it's about cohesion and chemistry.